tell you was that's what we refer to as the faith family, hallelujah. And we had a United Church of Christ pastor come some Easter to spend part of the time with us and tell us we were doing it wrong. And we said, no, that's the way we do it. So how's Easter been for y'all so far?
Beautiful.
Y'all get up early and sit by the tomb with Mary and ponder what was happening? Sit in the dark? John's gospel is full of light and dark. Jesus is the light of the world, and today we begin scripture that we share on Easter morning as Mary in the dark runs to the tomb where Jesus has been laid. I don't know about y'all, but for me, I run in the dark a lot to find Jesus. And sometimes I trip over stuff on the way, and lots of times Mary gets blamed for that. Somehow, this scripture strikes me as it speaks to us more than it speaks to those who are the Peters of the world and the beloved disciple, the Johns of the world, but the Marys of the world, who actually stay at the tomb, weeping. One of our strongest emotions and our greatest expression of it, weeping out of grief for what we think we've lost. When Mary sees Peter and John, she says, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." How sad must be her heart at thinking that thought. How sad each of us who has lost someone dear has been when we think someone has been taken from us and we will never see them or have them again. And yet the message of this scripture, the message of Easter, is a message of rejoicing. It's the message of Mary who stays faithfully at the tomb weeping and runs into these angels. Do you all run into your angels during the week? I mean, do you do that? Because they're hanging out waiting for you to run into them. And if you're not calling on them, they are so disappointed because they're just hovering there waiting to help you. I know that personally. We made the decision to go shopping yesterday. Parking spots are rare on the Saturday before Easter. But as I have in the past, as we were driving down the second row, I said, "Parking angels, where are you?" I am not kidding. There was a spot in that row. So you need to call on those angels. So Mary runs into these angels, and they're hanging out waiting for her. They're hanging out waiting to help her understand what's really happened. Not what she thinks happened, not what looks like it happened, but what really happened. What brings us to this place this morning began Thursday night, Maundy Thursday, when we're given the commandment to love each other as Jesus just showed us how to love by washing the feet of all the disciples. And it continued on Friday. And if you were here with us Friday night, you participated in a most amazing service. It was the service of the shadows, and as it is bright and light today, so it was dark and growing darker as service went on Friday night. Dale told me that's what happens every day, and he didn't think I needed to take theology courses to figure that out. But I suggested to him, see how easy it is to take theology courses if that's all you learn. But on Friday night, we shared not only the 7 last words of Christ, powerful, meaningful, and sometimes sad as they were. We also listened to one another as we have every Good Friday we've spent together as Faith Family. We listened to one another share personal testimonies around these 7 last words. I want to ask if it's okay, and if you're not comfortable, you don't have to do it, but I would ask that Maddie and Felicia and Kim and Brittany and Lefty and Kay and Ann stand up so we can see who shared their testimony. Just stand up so we can see who shared their testimony. These folks talk to us about forgiveness. Probably the most challenging challenge any of us faces is forgiveness. Over the little things, but especially over the big things. One of the things I shared Friday night was as my mother lay on her deathbed in our home, I went in to say to her, Mom, I want you to know that I forgive you for any of the things that I thought were terrible that happened in my life. Especially the times when she made me sit next to her at dinner at night, and she kicked me under the table when I opened my mouth to talk to my father about the politics of the day. And I said to her, and I ask you to forgive me for all those times in my life that I was not in right relation with you, that I was sarcastic or mean or chose not to understand. And I will tell you, of all the experiences in my life, that was one of the most moving. So they spoke to us, these folks that just stood up, about forgiveness. And they spoke to us about paradise. And they spoke about paradise from their own experience of having lost every family member they had but one by the time they were 26. And yet, as sad and sorrowful, as heavy as those experiences were and perhaps remain, at the end of them is not only the promise of paradise, but Jesus promises it. So it's the realization of paradise. And when it was talked about again later, the whole notion that, yeah, I'm going to be with those folks again that I love. And for those of you who wonder, and want to ask you to wonder not, the theology in this church is, if you lost a beloved pet, you're going to be with those folks too, because they're part of who you were in life. And I know that means something very special to someone sitting here among us today. They spoke of what it meant when Jesus said, Mother, this is your son, and son, this is your mother. And while we laughed about some of the experiences, we weren't told all of the experiences of how hard it was to raise a gifted and special child. And we laughed at the funny parts of that, and we cheered at the success of somebody who had, I can't remember what it was, bipolar issues, is that right? Bipolar issues, and is now earning his doctorate, will receive his doctorate this November. But how there were nights where that mom went to bed and locked her door and prayed that her son would not break it down and come in and harm and or kill her. That was part of the experience too. And we talked about feeling forsaken and how depression leads us into places that we feel like we're all alone. We're in a desert and no one's there with us. And yet, this person knew, not forsaken, because we believe on this day in that little tiny baby born, called Emmanuel, God with us, always. And we talked about thirst, how we thirst for that which Jesus promises, for that which quenches what seems an unslakable thirst otherwise. And we find that when we find companions, and we find family, and we create a home for us and them together. We talked about how Jesus said, "It is finished," and we didn't know what it was. Talked about how hard it is to share with a beloved family member when someone else passes and is done in this life. And finally, we talked about into your hands I commend my spirit. Whose hands do we trust if we do not trust God's hands? Jesus from the cross says, lastly, into your hands I commend my spirit. And we are challenged here and now with all that happens on our journeys, that in each of those experiences, we say to God, to your hands I commend my spirit. Let my spirit be your spirit. May I hear your word of invitation. May I see where this journey is going, even if I can't see around the bend. May I know you're with me. And no matter where I'm going, I can commend my spirit into your hands because you're there for me. Those experiences bring us to the experience of today, where Mary is still weeping and yet stops when she hears Jesus speak to her. And what does he say? Very simply, Mary. And you remember earlier in John, where we're told that he will call his sheep by name, and his sheep will know who he is by the sound of his voice. And so today, may we all hear our names. May we hear Ruth and Nancy and Jonathan and Kim and Scott and Betty and Jim and Frank and Ann and Caitlin and Sharon and Deb, Charlie Mark. All of us, may we hear our names. Kay, and Felicia, and Tammy, and Joe, and Brian, and Al, and Deb, and Penny, and Stephanie, Sandra, Phyllis. I could keep going, but it's getting late. Have you got the picture? Listen for your name, because your God, our God, Jesus tells us, I'm ascending to my Abba and to your Abba, to my God and your God. Jesus is telling us that this really special, sacred, beloved relationship that he has with the Abba at his resurrection, and really even before that and forever after that, is our relationship. We are so loved. We just really need to get that. That's the Easter message. You are so loved. And if you were here Friday night, after the service was over, we were closing everything down. Many people had left. The shadows were growing. We saw this picture on the wall, and I think we need to dim the lights. I know it's really difficult to see this day. This is the lectern, and beyond it there's an image on the wall. Would anybody who was here like to share what they thought that image was? Somebody like to share what you thought that image was who was here?
Seeing that I took the picture. Not really, can't really see it well, but someone said to me, look, and I did. It literally looked like the shadow of a person, not gonna say Jesus because we don't know what he looks like, but it was literally a shadow of a person that was going like this. And as soon as I saw it,
Show everybody that. Come on up here, Doug, so people can hear it. They can't see it. She just wants the mic.
She really likes putting me up here. Is it on? Yeah. I was saying that the light that was here was a man, an image of a man that was like this, with his head bowed. And at that moment, goosebumps just riddled my whole body. And every person that we showed, without even saying what we were seeing, saw the same thing. It was just this amazing thing. But that was what the picture was of, a person with their hands held as though they were praying. And it appeared as though there was a reflection of the light behind them. It was amazing.
That's the way it is all the time. God is with us all the time. God is with each and every one of us, hanging out with us all the time. What I saw when I looked at that was an image that also seemed to morph and to move a little bit and didn't remain the same. And I'm thinking, wow, there's something going on here. Al, did you want to say something? Because you were really touched by it too. Do you want to share what you saw here? You don't have to put you on the spot.
I saw an image of a person sitting there. It was overwhelming. Everybody standing back there with us had goosebumps. It was amazing. It looked like an image of a man. To me, bowed head, hands in the form of prayer. It just really got you. It was amazing.
And that's our God. That's our God, always with us, always loving us, always there for us. So, folks, he is risen. Hallelujah, hallelujah.